The world is facing a major transition to artificial intelligence, with some predicting nirvana and others fearing disaster. 250 years ago, Adam Smith advocated for the role of markets to improve the lives of all citizens, but also recognized the need for government to structure those markets. Harvard's Jason Furman has worked on getting that balance right, both as an economist at Harvard and as President Obama's senior economic advisor. Artificial intelligence, the investment in it, the expectation of it, is driving the markets and even parts of the economy at this point. One of the questions is, do we just let them play, let them go as far as they want, as fast as they want, or do we have some regulation? I mean, Adam Smith is known for the wealth nations and is thought as a free marketeer, but as you've written, there was another book he wrote on moral sentiments that also said, you got to do this for the good of everybody. Where do we get the balance?
Yeah, it's funny. When I think of AI, in some ways I almost start with morality. Not what's it going to do to economic growth, what's it going to do to inflation, but what's it going to do to our sense of meaning and purpose and how we think of ourselves as human beings. It's a technology that has incredible upsides in every dimension, but it also has very big downsides in every dimension. And for me, the trick is figuring out, what we can do to take more of those upsides and mitigate more of those downsides. Now, that may sound like an obvious principle, but putting into action is, very difficult and complex and varies from domain to domain, even within AI itself.
And some would say that although the principle is obvious and terribly important, the application has not been particularly well done in recent years. Some would say with the China shock, with the imports, like in autos and the Rust Belt, what happened there? We didn't properly deal with the dislocation for human beings. And more recently in social media, which really came on, big new innovation, has done what many people think has done a lot of harm. What are the questions, at least, we should be asking this time to make sure we don't get it wrong?
The first important question when it comes to AI is how much are you trying to get the technology to solve the problem versus how much you're changing other things outside the technology to maybe even clean up the mess that the technology creates. So let's take one example, which I think is pretty clear, which is bioweapons. We're not going to say it is okay for AI systems to help people make bioweapons and that we're just going to distribute gas masks and stockpile vaccines. That's not a remotely acceptable answer. We should have regulation that stops the technology from doing that in the first place. Let's take something at the other extreme that I deal with as a professor. AIs can help students cheat on their homework. There is no technological solution that the AI companies can do for that. You can't tell the models that they can't answer questions because you don't know if the question is coming from a student or a citizen or whoever else. There we need to solve the problem outside of AI. For example, switching away from problem sets and take-home exams and more to in-person exams and extra instructional time. When it comes to job loss, what is it like? Is it like a bioweapon that you should stop the AI from doing it in the first place? Or is it like AI helping a student cheat where the AI might lead to job loss, but instead we need to do things like help people find jobs or compensate them or give them wage subsidies or something else? I think that's probably closer to the second, that we can't really tell the AI companies you can't replace jobs. We have to figure out what to do in our economic system to clean up after any mess they might create.
We had the China shock in this country. I know about it because I'm from Flint, Michigan, and we felt it in Flint, Michigan pretty powerfully. There was a lot of talk about training and putting some federal money toward it, and there was some of that done, but I think most people would agree not nearly enough. Does it make sense politically to tax the AI companies and use that money to help in the job transition?
Look, I think we need to redo our tax system so that we do have enough money to finance this transition. As a card-carrying economist, I'm in favor of broad base and low rates. So I would deal with corporate taxation as a whole, capital taxation as a whole, and I wouldn't target any particular company or industry. The only argument in my mind for targeting a particular company or industry is if you think they create what I would call a negative externality.
AI is global. and the United States or any given country could go and try to have certain regulations, but it really goes around the globe. Can there be meaningful regulation without a multilateral approach?
I just don't think there's going to be a multilateral approach. What we could hope for is a little bit of convergence where the different countries are talking to each other. And I think it's really important that the United States and China are talking to each other about this topic. And we put in place some types of rules, and China puts in place some types of rules, and those rules are, somewhat similar to each other. I'm not saying that that's definitely going to happen. That's what I hope happens. But the idea that we have some global super regulator is, to me, just a pipe dream that we shouldn't waste any time on. But some convergence in regulation, I think, is a possibility. I mean, I've been to China. I've talked to government officials there about AI. They do actually have a lot of the same worries that we have in the United States. They have a big youth unemployment problem. They don't want to make that worse with AI. They certainly don't want AIs to be bioweapons and to kill everyone in China or everyone in the United States. And so, I think there is some common problem we're all dealing with that I hope we can have a conversation to figure out how to collectively come up with better answers to.
When you talk about the United States and China with respect to AI, there's a lot of coverage about who's ahead, who's behind, what we need to do to stay ahead. How important is it that one side win that battle, that race?
First of all, I don't love the race metaphor because I don't think it's ever going to end. Some people think you get a few years, you got recursive self-improvement, and that's it. Whoever's there first wins. But there's two really important things here. One is the technology I expect to continue to progress. But second, being a couple months behind might actually become less important over time, not more important over time. Which is to say, as the capabilities improve, it'll matter for certain things that are really important, like cybersecurity and war. And that's why it's important for us to try to stay ahead to the best extent possible. But for most other applications in our businesses or our personal lives, I think we're going to find that using a cheap model that is 6 months old, 1 month, year old, maybe even 2 years old, will have way, way more enough power for anything that we need in our day-to-day lives. So in some sense, the cutting edge is going to be about solving a smaller and smaller set of problems, while the follow-on stuff will be way more than capable enough for almost everything else.
And finally, Jason, come back to where you started, that for you, in many ways, the moral question is the most important question about AI. I'm not sure that we as a people, government, or however you count, are good at dealing with moral questions. I mean, despite Adam Smith's being a moral philosopher and starting there, how can we get our arms around moral questions as a society?
David, I don't know the answer to that. But part of the answer to that, and I'm a believer that no one person in one government has the answer, is to have more of the conversation and to make sure our conversation isn't just, is AI a bubble that's about to burst? What's AI doing to jobs? But that everywhere, whether it's in universities, on conversations here on Bloomberg, or our day-to-day conversations, that we're all thinking hard about this issue, because collectively something could come out of that conversation in a way that no one person, certainly not this person that you're talking to today, knows the answer.